beloved, beautiful souls. While I'm already uploaded a little bit about my history, a bit of autobiography, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jem. I thought I'd better explain how I started or realized I knew I had psychic abilities. I was about 8, maybe a little bit older, and I would lie in bed and I could see the air vibrating. This is really hard to explain because a lot of things that we could do as children, we lose in adulthood. But I could see literally the, for want of a better word, that the air wasn't still, that it was vibrating. And the second thing was at school, at primary school, I used to gather kids around me and I would say, do you know I can control the weather? And I'd say, and they'd say, okay, prove it. So I'd say, okay, in a minute, the wind's going to blow and it'll be cloudy. And it was. Now, I'm not saying that I did have control of the weather. Maybe it was coincidence. I don't know. Later, at high school, I got to be called a witch because I didn't know at the time that I was a psychic and a medium, but we used to have seances and we would scare ourselves silly. But it was all because I was there. And I was into this sort of stuff. I believed in magic. This is all before I became a Christian. Mind you, my parents were sending me to Sunday school, even though they weren't religious themselves. And I had a few experiences with Ouija boards that were very frightening. And another time, there was about, I'm not quite sure whether there were 6 or 8 of us, that one of the girls lay down, and believe it or not, we just put one finger underneath her, and I don't know what we said. We repeated something 3 times, and next minute we levitated her. I was then 21 and I was a Christian at the time, and I actually found myself either levitating or I was astral traveling. And I told the pastor, immediately he said it was demonic. Now, you already know I have a lot of trauma from sexual abuse in my life. So it wasn't until my 20s that I started mucking around as a witch. I started, actually, I don't know if you want to call it white or black witch, just call me grey. I would start manipulating things. First, it was objects. Now, this is really hard to explain. I would so say I was at a roulette table, and I did this in my 30s as well. I would pick a number, and then I would look at that board, that goes round and round, and with a kind of push, as it's going round, kind of a push with my brain, I would force it to stop on that number. And I also would put suggestions in people's mind and say, you've got an itchy knee. Next minute, they'd scratch their knee. I just believed in me. I just believed I had all these powers. In fact, at one stage in my mid-20s, I actually had a coven supposedly after me in Townsville. And I did a few bad things. I cursed a few people. I've explained that in previous videos, and I believe that came and bit me back. It wasn't until my 30s that I learned about automatic writing, and my first attempts were terrible. They were either gibberish or very negative, because I hadn't realized that you've got to protect yourself. So if I automatically write today, I say, spirits of love and light, protect me as I write. But I didn't realize I had the gift. There's another time I was in my late 20s and I was a patient in hospital, and I met another patient, and I just touched her hand and I started reading, and I was accurate just by touch. Another time I did take up tarot card lessons, and I was very good at it, but I stopped doing it because I said, anyone can do tarot, and I've got gifts in other areas. I was so gifted that once a year, a medieval fair would come to South Brisbane. And one particular year, I was in my 30s. This is all before drug addiction. I was in my mid-30s, and I met this girl, did the same thing, touched her palm and told her a whole life story. Unbeknownst to me, she was the daughter of the manager of the medieval thing, and they wanted me to be the psychic, but I couldn't, because after that year, instead of being at South Brisbane, they moved to Mullaney, and I didn't have transport to get up there. The other things I have predicted, I'm very good. When my father, and I've explained this, was a gambler. My father's passed now, and he'd come home and he'd lost all his money, and he had one last race, that he had threw everything on. I would get it right. And I did that with a second husband who was very similar to my father. He was a gambler too, and I've won trifectas that I've only paid $2.50 for half. And so I would pick 2 horses to win, 2 horses for second, and 2 horses for third. So if that first 2, if one of those horses won, then the second one had to come second. If it didn't come second, my trifecta was blown. So for this $2.50 trifecta, I picked 2, 2, and 2 horses, and I won $2,500. I've also told you before about my wins at the casino and how I managed to move and push objects. Now, people ask me, when I channel, how is it? And it's like hearing, it's a neutral voice, and it's like a radio, and it's telling you words, not words, that are harmful, like go do this to yourself, go do that. It's giving you information that I can't possibly know. My higher self, it might be about physics, it might be about the universe, it might be about spirituality. So after the disaster in my 30s, I had another go in my late 30s, and this time I was successful. At the time, I was lonely, single, looking for love, so I did a lot of automatic writing about love. But I can also sometimes see ghosts and spirits. Sometimes they look as real as you and me. Sometimes they're shadows. Sometimes they're just a thought. So a thought will pop into my head. So say you might have your loved one beside you, and in my head I'll say, oh, do you know that you've got a male figure, and I think he's your brother, and he's looking over your shoulder, and I'll describe the person and what they're doing. And another time, and I normally don't do this, but there was a very famous child case. This child went missing, and I got a lot of what I call download. So I wrote all this information, and I knew so much information. I sent the letter off to the police, but I wrote it anonymously because I was too scared that if the police read all this information and it came true, which it later did, that they would wonder, how come this person knows so much? And everything I wrote later came true. And other things that I've written about that I hadn't had a clue about. My son, who believes in my abilities, has checked it up. Now, sometimes I've also, when I've helped lost souls go on, there was a case where my husband Robbie and I were walking, and I couldn't see that there was a young man, but Robbie could. So I helped the young man pass over. I said the words, how to pass over, and I knew that he passed over because I got that gut feeling. I also need to tell you that my father, when we were living in England for a while, was a truck driver, and he used to drive from where we lived to Wales. One time, and he would take me, as a baby. One time, my aunt came with us, and they stopped in the middle of the road was a UFO. Since that, and I was a baby at the time, I think aliens have always taken an interest in me and in my son. All my children have actually seen UFOs, but two of them deny that they're UFOs. They just think it's just some anomaly, where my youngest accepts it. He's seen greys. I've been abducted. My son has seen some really weird things. I've been abducted a few times, and I've told you about these abductions. I've told you about seeing the UFOs, and I think these entities have had a play in what I can do psychically. Now, let's get to when I was a drug addict. For some reason, meth opened my eye, my third eye, even better. So I was even more accurate when I did a reading about a person. But after Rob died, which is 5 years ago, I stopped practicing. I just stopped. And I've only just started practicing again. So I need to practice because you lose the ability if you don't practice all the time. It's like singing. I'm a singer. Oh, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And going back to my autobiography that I've just uploaded, the first part, I haven't told you that. I, at one stage, wanted to be a singer, and then another stage wanted to be a famous author. And I would write horror stories like Stephen King, and I would get no less than out of 20, 18. I was a very good writer, and my teachers used to say, by the time you're 26, you'll be an author. Well, it took a lot longer. So there's other times, going back to my psychic, where I've been accepted to do online work because of my abilities. But I said to them, what would happen if I can't read that person? Do you know what they said? Make it up, because it's all about the money, I said, can't do that. I'm not taking the job because I believe in honesty. And how I read people is I say, don't give me any information, nothing. I'll write it out so that the reason why I write it is so that they can have a record, and I'll say if this makes sense, this is for free, and if not, I won't do a reading, but if it does make sense, I will we will come to an agreement and I'll do $30 for 3 A4 pages. That was my phone, so I'll continue this another time. Take care, beloveds, of yourself and each other. Love, light, and blessings. Bye.